As Donald Trump returns to the White House, the 47th President of the United States is planting the stars and stripes all over his plans for the future. So where does that leave Europe? From tariff threats to an immigration crackdown, the EU now needs to reckon with a strictly America First approach. And European leaders are already taking stock, including Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk. Here to break down what this all means for the region is Wojciech Przybylski, Editor-in-Chief at Visegrad Insight. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
So first of all, let's dig into Prime Minister Tusk's speech today, telling EU lawmakers, and I quote, "Don't ask what America can do for Europe's security, but ask what we can do." Has Europe been too reliant on the US?
Well, that's a question that states the obvious. Yes, it has, by design. And also, it knows it has. So European leaders have been struggling to limit that dependency and beat the partnership element. That comes only if Europe invests in its security on all domains, the military one, energy security, and technological sovereignty. So these actions are going to speak for Europe itself eventually, whether Europe also wants not to be so dependent on the US.
What do you make of Tusk's address today? Poland currently holds the rotating EU Council presidency. Is this him trying to put Poland at the centre of the region's response to Trump, effectively saying Poland will lead from the front?
Well, it's not as much a response to Trump. It is a calling to the hearts and minds of Europeans to take Europe seriously. Donald Tusk has been saying, and with much admiration and affection for the European project, European history, how great Europe is. And there is no need to make Europe great again. That might have been read as a bit of a sarcasm towards Elon Musk or Viktor Orban, all those guys who are trolling internet and the media for trying to steal the narrative. And the big narrative Donald Tusk is offering is about keeping calm, carrying on, and upgrading the critical domains like armaments, purchase, protection of borders, which he mentioned as a policy choice, and most importantly, getting energy policy right. I mean, speaking of energy policy, he actually developed quite a number of arguments for why this pragmatic policy focused on energy prices stability, reducing inflation, reducing the legislative burden that fuels inflation in this domain is the number one priority. And we should reckon with the fact that Europe has to do more, not just on the military security, but in energy security foremost.
How critical is that energy security and that discussion around energy security, especially given what we've seen with this sort of so-called hybrid war of Russia?
Well, it is critical because Europe's ambition is to be independent of the autocratic powers that supply Europe. We know we are dependent. We've been running on cheap American security, but we've been running also on cheap Russian gas, cheap Russian energy, and cheap Chinese labor. So in the trio, there is just one ally. It is the United States. There is no benefit from becoming dependent on autocratic powers like Russia or China is, but also in the domain of military security, Europe needs to do more. Energy-wise, Europe has been doing amazingly well, cutting the ties from Russia, cutting off the gas, oil supplies, replacing them immediately with American deliveries and other deliveries, but essentially also moving forward in the green transition to the next level of not being dependent on anyone globally that much to the extent that they are still today. So energy security is at the bottom of at the bedrock of security policy overall for all of our countries in Central Europe in particular. But they're also at the bedrock of the discussion about European competitiveness. Big part of investment that have been going away from Europe over the past 4 years of Joe Biden's administration have been going there also because of cheaper and stable energy prices. And until Europe sorts out energy prices and completes the transition, offering independent and reliable supply of energy, it won't be, again, competitive to the extent many other players globally are.
Now, we've also talked about defence. Prime Minister Tusk urged leaders to get on board with high levels of defence spending, up to 5% of GDP. That's something President Trump has also called for. Do you think this is Tusk sending a signal to Trump? Look, Europe hears you and will do what it can. Or is Tusk trying to put a positive spin on Trump's threats?
I think neither. Donald Tusk is saying to all other European leaders that it's a shame that Poland alone, together maybe with a number of countries in the Baltics, are paying for the rest of the European Union for their defense, for defending their borders. So Poland is spending 5% GDP, and countries like France or Germany are treating, if I paraphrase Mr. Macron, Poland as a supermarket for security, or Ukraine. So that's, this is about striking at the heart of the problem. This talk about how Poland is delivering security to the other partners in Europe. This is the really important inter-European problem and challenge. And that needs to be met with credible response, not because of Donald Trump. The problem was there the same under Joe Biden or whatever other president of the US there would be. It is our problem, and it's a problem that relates to the decomposition of our defense posture after the end of the Cold War. So the peace dividend we've been living off, and basically we've been reducing in many countries of Western Europe these levels of investment in our security, allowed expansion of economy, expansion of wealth, expansion of prosperity. But now, if we continue along that way, it will be a very difficult price to pay, because we'll pay with our freedoms, we will pay with our political independence, and with insecurity on our borders. So this is what Poland says to other European partners, not to Donald Trump. That's not really what the messages of Donald Tusk was about.
Wojciech Przybylski, Editor-in-Chief at Visegrad Insight. Thank you for your time. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
And that's all for World News tonight. Do stay with us here on TVP World. I'm Aaron Darman. Good night.